We're coming to you live from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. And tonight we'll be talking about child literacy. Let's start by introducing our guests for this evening. And I'll start at my very right with Mr. Robert Mugambo, who is the National Trainer in charge of research at Uwezo. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
having me here.
Right, and right next to him is Nyana Kakoma, who is a writer, editor, blogger, and publisher. She created the online platform So Many Stories that promotes Ugandan literature. Welcome, Nyana.
Thank you.
Right next to Nyana is Aaron Chirunda, who is the co-founder and CEO of Njuba, an education organization focused on helping children improve their literacy.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Susan Wamala Serunguma, who is the head teacher Mukono Boarding Primary School. She's a child educator and has been for 26 years now. I'm right? Right, I hope.
You're right.
26 years now, and she's won an award as the best teacher in the Central Region. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Josephine. Good evening, viewers.
Right. So let's begin by saying it as it is. Once again, thank you for joining us. And I'd like to start with you, Robert, because Uwezo has done all kinds of research when it comes to child literacy. And I want to know, from your research, what has been the most shocking outcome or finding?
The most shocking finding is that learning levels are still low. We tested children 6 to 16 years, and we gave them just a P2 story to read and comprehend a P2 story.
What's a P2 story?
Now, a P2 story should be a story with like 2 paragraphs, and each paragraph should have simple words of around, should have like 3 sentences in a paragraph. Now, when we tested children 6 to 16 with a P2 story, we found out that a child in P3, because after P2, by P3 you should do something good in this story, we found out that only 2 out of 10 could read that story, meaning 8 out of 10 in P3 couldn't read that story. Now, those children in P3 to P7, the amalgamation of P3 to P7, only 7 out of 10 couldn't read that story.
They couldn't read the story?
7 out of 10.
Wow. Oh, just before we get further ahead with ourselves, Susan, when we say child literacy, what are we saying?
Child literacy is the ability of how a child can read and write. Literacy is reading and writing.
It has nothing to do with mathematics.
It has nothing to do with science. It has nothing to do with social studies. And actually, that is the challenge we are having in most of the schools, where they have literacy 1 as science, literacy 2 as social studies, but literacy is basically reading and writing.
So literacy 1 is reading?
Literacy 1 is reading, literacy 2 is writing. And now there's a new policy of how the teachers are conducting what we call a literacy hour.
Okay.
And by the end of that hour, the 2 are already taught.
Is this a government policy?
It's a government policy, and it is a project that is running in more than 80 schools right now. And the literacy achievement and retention activity that they have come on board to teach the teachers in schools to get to know what is literacy. And literacy is the basis of learning. How is the child going to use the language? How is the child going to acquire what he wants during the learning procedure?
When you speak about how is the child going to use the language, it makes me wonder, are we teaching them in the local language or are we teaching them in English?
Regardless of which language you're teaching.
Okay.
Whether it is local or English, all languages have basics, have principles, have elements, and have guidelines and approaches.
Okay. Do we have literature for our children that is in our local languages?
Yeah.
Do we have books for kids?
Yes.
Yes, we do. There are a couple of Ugandan writers that have written books, some in local languages and as well as English. So they are available in bookshops, some are given out in schools, some are in school libraries. Yeah, they're there.
But the literature is not as much as it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, our children are not reading because partly there's no books to read, or the books that are there are not attractive and beautiful enough for them to fall in love with reading.
What do you mean attractive and beautiful? We don't have that luxury. We're
I
just
know.
expected to read.
Yeah.
But, I mean, ask yourself, why don't we read?
Yeah.
Why don't adults read? It's because when you were a child, you either had no books to read, books were not attractive enough for you to read, so you never fell in love with books. And then you grow up and books are alien. And the whole time you're in school...
Could it be, Aaron, that
Yes.
you are expected to read things that you did not connect with? I was asking a couple of friends earlier, and the books they remember reading are Peter and Jane, this girl with blonde hair who fell down, I don't know where, places
And
they've
Mr.
never
Green
been.
and
Yes.
Exactly, and some snow
And playing in
But
meadows.
then
and
when I ask people who are readers and they've been reading for a long time and they grew up reading, I asked, for example, my father, and he told me books that they grew up reading. And there was Nishoma, Isheka Tabazi, there were quite a number of books. So was it that there was something different that was being done then?
I want to assure you they're back on board. Under the program I've been talking about that is taking place in over the 80 districts, we are having now oral literature. And this oral literature is in the local language. And we are coming back with our stories, our fictions, that at the end of the reading, the children can learn lessons.
Yeah. In
The
fact,
children can have the morals, instilling morals.
Yes.
So I'll bring it back. If you could recall some fictions like Wakaima, Newango, we are bringing it back in oral literature. And when these teachers are introducing this kind of discipline, we have even enabled them to have maybe like energizers. We are bringing back the tongue twisters, comparing
Rhymes.
the tongue twisters in English and in the local language. Daudi debu dobu dobu debu dobu to say. Not only Betty bought a bit of butter, the butter she bought was a bit bitter. So
When they don't know what
oral
butter is.
literature. When they don't know what is baba, 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 baba. We believe that if these children start with the local language, they can understand better, because at the end of it all is the mastery. How can our children interpret? How can our children comprehend? So that is what is going on in those districts. So these books they are talking about that are attractive, they didn't have those books, the teachers before. But in this program, they've moved ahead to get the books. We have a local book, book 1 up to book 3 now, nsobola okusoma n'okuwandiika. At the same time, I can read and write in English. So both languages are catered for, the local language and the English language.
Okay. Robert, you wanted to say
I
something?
must underscore that in our research, we found out that 23% of the schools we visited had one book
One book.
for the teacher and a few for the pupils, 23% for English
Is this in the rural areas?
across the country,
Okay.
across the 100 and then 12 districts.
Then
Then we found out that, you see, districts are,
Let's not go there.
you can't go there. Then when it came to local language, it is 47%, meaning there are local language books now in the entire spectrum of the country compared to the English.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think maybe the districts you might have visited, I don't know whether they
All the
visited
all
the
the
project,
districts,
but at least as I've told you, 80 and beyond, they have been catered for both local and English. And we had a challenge that when we are teaching the local language, actually the teachers didn't have a reference.
Exactly.
Right now they have what? A reference. And we've taught them only that the challenge that is still there is how the teachers and maybe the entire nation perceive a local language. The mindset.
I agree.
Most teachers fail to teach the local language because they believe, actually most of them were complaining that if we go and teach the local language, they would take away the children from our schools because they believe the parents who are their customers feel comfortable when the children are learning in English and they can speak English. So we are trying to tell them that please sensitize the parents and tell them that local language is for mastery cases, but the media of instruction in classrooms still remains English.
Well, Nyana, and I think, Aaron, this question will be for you. I know UPE has been there, and the government says we've done enough with UPE. Now, we want the parents and the teachers to actually play a role. How does a parent play a role in teaching their child to read? I know, Nyana, you're doing something related to that.
Yeah. I think we do it the same way we teach everything to our children. The same way you teach them how to brush their teeth, to drink water, to do everything. It's the same way you teach them how to read. You start early and you do it constantly. So it becomes part of, at our home, we read. It's what we do. And to normalize it, it's not an event, it's not a grand thing that happens once every month. It's a thing that we do at our home. We choose a day, a time, and read. So that's the best way to introduce it. You introduce it early and do it constantly so that it becomes a normal thing that they do at home.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe to just add, a child's brain starts to develop when they're still in the womb.
True.
And they can be introduced to books at that time.
So we should
It's
read
the
to
best
ourselves when we are pregnant.
Yeah. So mothers read to yourself.
Exactly.
to yourself.
Okay, to the baby.
In the womb. And as the baby comes out, even fathers can read to the baby, to you, and the baby, when the baby is still in the womb. Because then the baby starts to recognize voices and starts to hear sounds. And as they are born and start to grow up, they start to capture vocabularies when they are ready to. And I think that what parents can do is to make bedtime stories a culture in the home and make bookshelves part of the home. And I keep telling my friends that if you have more shirts than books in your house, there is a question mark.
But what books am I putting in those shelves?
I would like to inform you that when we talk of the bedtime stories and the reading, that culture has a class, social class.
That's true.
There are some that would feel the bedtime, they can, achieve that. But we're having a class which has the biggest percentage of never think, how do we teach reading? We can advise those parents to have the simple text like a Bible. Before they go to bed, they can read verses
together as a family.
And they have a timetable. They can use newspapers. Newspapers, we have the local newspapers. They can read. So the most important thing is the basic of reading is not how you speak English, but how can a child express himself? How can a child be articulate? How can a child observe the sounds, the blending of the letters, and add it together? So that is the most important thing. Because normally when we talk of reading, we focus mostly on English. But we want to bring up how can a child read, regardless of which language.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when I was growing up, my mother used to read to us the Bible. So we had our bedtime story was Bible stories. After dinner, we would sit down and she would tell us stories in the Bible, of how creation was done and everything. And so we grew up with a curiosity to want to find out more. And I remember at a young age, I started to pick her Bible and read for myself in Luganda.
Yes, please.
And that's the thing, when you normalize it, is there'll come a time when the kids do it themselves, when you don't have to be there, when they can go and pick what they want. You want them to reach at that, because it's a normal, usual thing.
Yeah, in fact, for us, in the survey, we found out that the parents' involvement is key in enabling learning of the child. And we tested parents who do something, who help the child probably read homework, just look into the book, even though you don't tell that child that do this or that. You see, parents say that, I've never gone to school. But you don't need to go to school to know a tick and a cross. You can know that these are 5 ticks and these are 3 crosses. But how involved are you in the learning of your child? The more you are involved, the more there is that magnet that a child will be so much in love with learning more. So involvement of the parent into learning of the child is key in the literacy.
That brings me to my next question. How in tandem are the parent and the teacher? For example, teachers use charts, I think, so the apple, the banana, all of that. But when you go home, the child picks the mother's phone, or the child has an iPad, or they have, so is there a disconnection at a certain point?
Yeah, I think as Robert was talking about the homework, let's take an example of the homework. Remember we said literacy is reading and writing. So when we look at the homework of the child, this teacher must have helped the parent to cross-check. We look at the letters, for example, the formulation of letters. How do we write the capital letters? how do we differentiate between a big letter and a capital
small
letter? So as this teacher is marking the child, is guiding, not simply ticking and crossing. So the parent can look at the book and get to know, oh, this is how we formulate a capital M. So that is how the teachers must help. And also when we are looking at this kind of reading, also we focus also on writing. I would like also to talk about writing.
And we're going to talk about writing, but let's first take a short break.
All right,
We'll
thank
be
you.
right back with it.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you live from the Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. And just before we took a break, Susan, you were talking about the need to also give attention to writing.
Writing.
Yes.
We look at the types of writing. These children, young as they are in P1, P2, we still have a learning area known as news. And the news is comprised of creative writing, whereby children come out and say the news and they draw the news.
They draw the news?
Yes, they draw the news.
What do they draw? Or they draw what happened?
They draw what
Okay.
happened. So we say they draw the news.
Okay.
It may sound funny, but that's how it's done. So even the teacher, when he's beginning to teach this learning of news, will tell us he's drawn pictures, and the kids can interpret the pictures, and then they can also write their news and also draw what really happened.
Wow.
And then we have, that is creative writing, and then we have functional writing, where children will have to learn how to write, like CVs, like application letters, like writing about themselves, biographies. So writing is also part of the learning basis of literacy.
I think I missed something in school, or maybe I just don't remember. I don't know if these things were there when we went.
did application letters.
Yes.
Some of them
You didn't write some letters?
Didn't you learn how to write an
News
application
and
letter?
They're bringing them back right
You're
now.
bringing them
Yeah.
back,
We
but I
have
can't
a
go back
writing
to
competition
school,
as
so I
part of our
can't
Yeah,
go back. You're
writing
doing
co-
writing competition.
Yes.
To encourage children to write, and we have some stories written by children that are fantastic.
Yeah, which is creative writing, and also brings in the critical thinking as
True.
a
Yeah.
life skill.
True.
So they move together, reading and writing.
Okay, well, we went out and spoke to some people on the street earlier in the week to find out where they are in their head about child literacy. Let's play that clip and hear from them.
I started reading when I was still young in P2.
I started reading at around the age of 3.
I learned when I was in baby class.
It was about 5 years while I was in P1.
I was 3 years.
The children will just sing the song and say, Pala, opal, pipa, polola, piru, chupa, tepo, potro. So that you see that there's the way it is memorable. You'd remember.
I remember we read Alpha Yorinyankore. There was some book called Kengoro and Rutaro.
Nile English course, remember.
Hyena and the leopard.
Student company, MK.
Their English books, they are mostly alphabetical.
We never engaged a lot in Uganda.
I think what matters is the language the child learns first is what the child should learn, should be the model of the language of instruction.
It's better to teach a child in the language which he can understand well.
It was from reading and writing Runyanko that we came to be introduced to English.
So the issue of patriotism comes out very well if they are taught locally. But here is a situation that we come to learn in English. Sometimes you find even the MPs are not able to express themselves very well in English.
So local language is better than English.
I think literacy level starts from home. I think the parents really play a good role. Like for example, if a parent comes back home and there's no single book in the home, maybe the parents just go to the bar and drink and come back. So the parent doesn't read anything. There's no book, there's no newspaper, there's no novel, there's nothing at home that a child can read. The child will have first way to go to school and get reading materials. I think that presents a challenge.
The teachers themselves, most of English and the languages, they should be hands-on. They should engage the students and the children into the reading itself, and even bringing the necessary requirements around. The books should be around, the novels should be around.
We should build public libraries in Uganda where every person, a kid, a grown-up, they can go and access books.
There was something which used to go like a song. It was also a song. Say, unu nen ko panyera cha kwanya chugana chugania chuga panyeri nyeri. So that the song would start and then it would be continuous. It would be building up. Maybe this achuga is a fruit. So this lady would pick a fruit, take someone's fruit, then another person would pick the story from there and keeps on building up. So it helps in comprehension. So then if a child goes to school, you also encourage them to also tell their own stories, which they have learned from school. Ask the child, okay, today now, what were you taught today in school? Then the child will also tell you a story. And children love telling stories if a parent gives them time. But the challenge is that many parents don't have that time for the children. So if you're close to your children, they'll tell you those stories, and you also tell them stories back. So it will help them comprehend. And comprehension is very important because if someone can remember something, then they can maybe relate it to another thing. That's why it's important for a child to relate what they see at home with what is presented to them in school, the environment. Then they can easily, their brain develops in that sense.
Well, let's take some questions that we got earlier. One of the questions comes in from James, and he says, the guests have spoken about the how of child literacy. Beautiful books, policy, different languages. What about the why? What is the aim of child literacy? Doesn't the why influence the why?
Yeah,
What is
it does. I mean, sometimes we have, we go through school to pass exams. But really, this day, reading is essential for our survival. We need to read to survive. Everything is written in different languages. And it is important for us as a race to read. It is essential for our own personal development. It is essential for our national development. It is essential for everything. So the motivation for you to read and the motivation for you to teach your child to read and to teach everyone around you to read is really that.
Yeah.
Because we need it to survive.
Okay.
And also for academic performance and excellence. If a child doesn't have a skill of reading, can never perform, can never pass the exam. How can she comprehend? How can she interpret? How can she predict? So for academic purposes, the child must be able to know how to read and interpret and comprehend.
Oh, Jana, this question is for you. How do you, Ronald is asking, how do you help kids to learn how to read and at the same time love to read for knowledge?
I think when you start by reading for fun, for pleasure, because everything you need, everything you read gives you more information. You keep building. You keep building your vocabulary and you keep learning more things. So it's almost inevitable that while they read for fun, the knowledge is already there. And it becomes easier when for someone who is already into a habit of reading, for example, to do research, to read for research purposes. So that it's the basic really to get them to read for fun so that then they'll seek the knowledge from the books.
Is there anybody who is making sure that the books that they're reading are books they should be reading? That the books that are available to the children in the libraries, or, because we have a lot of organizations that say, donate books, and then they just take and dump them at schools.
Yeah.
But are these the books that the children need?
I think let's start from home. What is at home?
Yeah.
Because you might bring material that is not palatable for the child.
Yeah.
But by and large, as our teacher said, that government is doing all its best to see that there are books in schools. But also, private schools have a fond of having a library that is full of books that either help or don't help. But you see, when you teach a child the basics to learn how to read, even though it's a book that talks about the rocket and the child will get a book and trying to get into this unknown field.
Yeah.
And you ask why do we stress reading?
Why is it important?
Why is it important? Now, reading is a dose. If you have malaria and you take a half dose, surely you're creating another challenge in your life. Now, if you have that dose of reading, of learning, you get it full. You don't need to be put in another country to understand how to survive. For example, if there is a new tool that has been brought here and there is a manual, honestly, you can't tell me you can't operate this thing.
Yeah.
You just get a manual and things start to unfold.
I think the boy children are very creative. They'll figure it out.
Anyone.
They might fix it wrong.
Exactly.
But the other reason, the other why, is that for children especially, that's how they build their language. That's how they build vocabulary. Because you keep building the new word that you keep adding onto your vocabulary. But it's also the way you create. Because when you're reading, you create a world in your mind. And that's how kids innovate. That's how they become storytellers. That's how they become engineers. Because they are already building things in there. That's how they travel. You have been to China, you have been to Japan, not because you've flown there, but because you've read
about it.
So that's the why. That's how they innovate. That's how they create things. But that's also how they relate with other people. The other person in the story, you've read books that make you sad.
Yes, exactly.
And that's empathy. They are learning to empathize with people, even if it's on a piece of paper. It's there. It becomes real, and that's how they, learn to empathize with people.
Okay. Well, let's take some questions from the audience. Mercy.
Hello. This goes to Nyana.
Do you want to be a bit louder?
This goes to Nyana.
Yes.
My dad wrote some books translated in Luo because I'm a Langi. So the thing is, how do we encourage such people to continue writing since he has retired, just retired this Tuesday? How do we encourage them to continue writing so that this literature is available there in the communities?
As a publishing house, So Many Stories is also interested in local languages, but we've found that the ecosystem around book production is also not developed. So you may have a writer, but there's no translator or not even an editor, someone who proofread and make sure that the spellings are right, that the proverbs are okay, that the facts are correct if they are factual things. So there has to be also an ecosystem that has to be built to encourage a proper production of books. And what you talked about, good-looking books as well matter. They matter because your child is going to pick that book from a bookshelf in a library or whatever. So just to build that ecosystem of editors, of storytellers, of people who can actually write, and it's something that we urgently need to do as a country.
And if also those books are written for the children, they work hand in hand with the Curriculum Development Center and the Ministry of Education to see that they are put on the syllabus or they are recommended for children to read.
Okay. And the next question?
Yes, Cosmas Charisma is my name. My question goes to, it's actually not a question but an observation. It goes to Madam Headmistress. I think the problem I've seen in Uganda is that most of these teachers leave college when they are half-baked. So you find that they're actually in class, but when the teacher himself doesn't know what he does in class. You even meet a teacher, but he can't even make a correct grammatical sentence in English, but he tells you, I teach English. I think the problem is with training. These PTTs, a teacher, a student living senior 4 and joins college, he comes out of the college after the 2 years with a certificate, in actual sense doesn't know what to do. Then another thing is...
So can she respond to that before you... yes,
actually, you're right. I wouldn't buy that of being half-baked teachers. Some of these teachers, that's why we keep on training them. And when we talk about when do people start reading, it's not when you're a child. We start reading with beginners, regardless of level. So even these teachers, when we take them for training, we look at them as what? Beginners. So I want to assure you that right now as the training is going on, these teachers, what they missed, they are now getting it into the what? The training, and they are passing on what is required to the children.
Okay.
Under the supervision of the head teachers and the school administrators. So maybe you might be doubting that maybe in the school where you were, as I said, it might not be under the project, or it might be a private school, and you feel this teacher, because we even advocate that if these teachers have problem maybe of pronouncing words, for instance, that's when we encourage the talking class. We want to teach the children how to pronounce the words. We can write the phonemes there. We can write the spellings. The teachers also might find a problem with spelling.
Susan, I'm curious, this seems like something that I don't think it cuts across to the whole country. Is it already being done everywhere? Or is it in specific schools? Yes, these trainings.
Not everywhere. Actually, I said there are around 80 districts.
Okay.
Yeah, the 80 districts.
But the plan is to take it
but I want to tell the person who has asked the question that they are worried, the parents are worried, that these children are handled by teachers whom you think can't read. I want to tell you that the training is going on, and we are improvising new methods of helping those teachers whom we think can't read, how they can make the children read. A teacher can help the children to spell when she cannot spell. So that's why we advocate for
and perhaps
these books themselves. They discover a lot. When it is extensive reading, the children read beyond. Some of them are even more informed than the teachers. So encouraging them to do the reading and also to have talking classes.
Well, Aaron, I'm going to give you an opportunity to add on to what she's been saying, but let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. Aaron, you wanted to say something before we took a break.
Yes, I was saying that it is true that the teachers may not be able to read right now. But you know, teachers are the most powerful people in the world. And instead of castigating them, we need to support them. Sometimes they're overwhelmed.
That's why they're
But
trained.
also, they finish senior 4, they go to teachers' college, they spend 2 years. I think that should be increased to 4 years, so they can spend more time and come out ready to handle our country. And I think, as a government, we need to do something about that, particularly.
Okay.
The trainings are going on. Aaron, I want to assure you the trainings are going on. And actually, when we move out to the schools where the teachers have attended the training, there is a very, very huge impact and change of those very teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, somebody else had a question. Yes, please ask your question.
Join is my name. Mine is a suggestion. I was suggesting that at least to the government that this child literacy be included on the curriculum, not only science, mathematics or what, but let it be from the start as part of the curriculum. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, it's a part of the curriculum. I've said right now, when you look at P1 up to P3, we have literacy hour. Literacy hour comprising of reading and writing. We also have news as a learning area. We have oral literature, and all that reading and writing is instilled. So
and we even have a day designated to reading.
Yeah,
and
there's
there should
also
be
a
a
day
day,
when they
drop
say they're
everything
reading.
and
So
read.
the curriculum already it's on. We are having literature, but maybe you could be having a problem that maybe in the school where your child is, you are still looking at literacy 1 as science and literacy 2 as English. I would like to inform the teachers out there, literacy has nothing to do with science or social studies. It is reading and writing.
Okay. Well, Aaron, you said there's a day for reading.
Yes.
Which day is that? Just so we will be clear.
So every 15th day of March,
yeah.
is Dear Day. And together with the Ministry of Education, we work on taking that across the country and having every child get at least 20 minutes to read.
Yeah.
And we also get them books and materials so everyone can read. And we also want the adults to join and read.
And we are
and
sending
make
out
sure
messages to all
everyone
schools.
is reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Nyana, I would like for you to demonstrate to us. Maybe we are reading the wrong way to our children.
Okay. For
so
some,
if you are reading to us.
Okay.
Children.
So I have a story to tell you. Can you lean in? Once upon a time, there was a bird that lived by the well. One day, a man requested his wife to fetch some water. The woman went to the well. When she reached the well, a bird started to sing. Do you see the bird here? Do you see the bird here? Yeah. There's a well and there's a woman carrying a pot of water on her head. The woman turned to look at the bird. Her water pot fell down and broke. When she returned home, she told her husband that there was a singing bird at the well that made her break the water pot. The man thought she was not serious. They sent their young daughter to fetch the water. As soon as the girl collected the water from the well, a bird started to sing. The little girl turned around to look at the singing bird, and of course, her water pot broke. She got home and told her father that her pot broke too. The man got upset. He thought the girl, just like her mother, was playing around. He decided to go to the well himself because the water that they collected was meant for the king. As soon as he had finished collecting the water from the well, the bird started to sing. Semusajja agenda, Dabiraba lyekeeyo kyekinyonyi kiri ku luzzi kyambadde ensimbi n'obutiiti jojoji kyuka nondeeba jojoji kyuka nondeeba.
So, Nyana, is that how we're supposed to be reading? Okay, I think we now get the point. I'd like to
It's supposed to be a fun activity and
engaging.
Yeah. And for the younger ones, they need songs or at least one line that they can keep repeating. There's a book called I Know an Old Muse Who Swallowed a Fly, and they keep repeating the phrase, I don't know why he swallowed the fly. And they just keep repeating that. It makes it memorable and it's also fun.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a very good story.
Susan, I'd like to ask you to make your closing remarks as you say whatever it is you want to say. Our time is fast spent.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing us on this. And also, I still advocate for teachers. What is literacy in school is reading and writing. And please let us embrace the teaching of local languages in our schools for mastery purposes. And also, when we are teaching English, let us teach English. If you are teaching local language, let us use the local language. And I'm telling you, Uganda will be a better place to live in when each child can express himself, when each child can comprehend, can interpret. So teachers, let's have our methods, our good methods of reading and writing.
Okay. Aaron?
There is hope. Our country is 52% children, below 15. And so with such a huge population that is children, we have hope, but we have work to do. Since many of them are not finishing school, we have work to do. We need to invest in them and help them to become the best they can ever be. And so you can join in to make that happen by getting a book and reading for your child at home.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Yana?
Let's not leave all the work to the government and the teachers and everybody outside our home. Charity begins at home. Let's start the culture at home. Let's read Bibles and newspapers and whatever books that are easy to come by at home. And let's make it a constant, and even if it's just a Saturday, and you say, for us on Saturday at home, that's when we read. So just make it a fun thing for your children. Don't tell kids, go to your room and read as a punishment, because they'll never want to read. It has to be a thing that they do for pleasure. Encourage your kids to give out books as gifts. Instead of going to every birthday party with a Barbie doll and I don't know what else, tell them pick books for their friends, and they'll start to know that that's a thing that you also do. Books should become just a normal thing that surrounds them. It's a normal thing that they do at home.
All right. And finally,
yeah, learning begins at home. Don't export learning and think that you'll take them to the headmistress to do a miracle for you. No.
Yeah.
Learning starts from your home. Get involved in your child's learning. Make sure that you are part of the story. Don't allow aliens to direct the learning of your child. Be part of the story, because if you're part of the story, then you are the greatest landmark to learning. The child will know, mom said this, dad said this, uncle said this, Jaja said this. So be part of the learning, and these children, 0 to 3 years, they have the best brain to learn whatever you give them.
All right. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for coming to the show. And I was wondering, actually, when we're going to have this conversation, if we have books written by Ugandans for children. So thank you very much for this. I'm very convinced now that it's not that we don't have Ugandan writers for children. It's that we maybe just don't know where the books are, or we just are not interested, and I hope we'll pick up the interest from there. Well, that was this episode of Perspective with Josephine Karunji. Thank you very much for watching. Don't turn the channel. I'm coming up next with NTV Weekend Edition. Keep it NTV.